Hi there, Rebecca Koffler here with Censored But Not Silenced, and I'm going to give you a quick intel brief on the recent Russian test of a nuclear-capable, nuclear-powered, absolutely new cruise missile called Burevestnik. 9M 730 Burevestnik in Russian, translated as Storm Petrel. The NATO designation is SSCX-9 Skyfall. What it is, it's a ground-launched, low-flying cruise missile that is unique. What makes it unique is that it is not only capable of carrying either a nuclear or conventional warhead, but it is also nuclear powered. It has a very unique propulsion system. The test took place on the 21st of October and is likely successful in my intelligence assessment. The missile flew for about 15 hours, which is not the maximum limit because of its unique propulsion system. It pretty much can remain in flight indefinitely for several reasons. It flew about 8,700 miles, which is approximately 3 times the distance of the United States between east and west. So the U.S. is distance east to west is 2,800 miles. So yeah, about 3 times. Why is it important? It is important that and the range of this missile is such that it can be launched from anywhere in Russia. And Russia is a large country, 11 time zones, and it would still reach the US homeland. What concerns me right now is that we do not have right now a specific capability. Neither the United States nor NATO, none of our NATO allies, have a specific weapon systems that is designed to intercept Burevestnik. And that is a problem. Such system does not exist. Tomahawks cannot intercept it. ICBMs obviously cannot. Patriots, there's one school of thought that Patriots missile defense could attempt to intercept it, but I'll explain what the problem with this is. My other concern is that having read in several U.S. authoritative publications such as the Wall Street Journal, the characteristics of the missile and sort of the responses or the evaluations of Western analysts, it stunned me actually, that there's a total misunderstanding of this missile systems and how the Russians think and why they designed it. I'm going to quote to you some of the statements from the Wall Street Journal, and then I'm going to comment on this. So, let's see here. While Western diplomats said the test represents a dangerous new capability for Russia, the announcement sparked more head-scratching than fear for some missile technology and nuclear proliferation experts. The article itself actually is titled, "Putin Uses Old Missile Technology to Send a New Message to the West." So what these experts, so-called experts, claim is that because the missile flies at subsonic speeds. It's not hypersonics. It's easy to detect and intercept. Well, first of all, the missile is low flying, okay? It is flying very low, hugging the earth or the sea, depending on what, where it's launched and what the target is, and it is swerving to evade missile defense systems, okay? So the claim that this weapon would be anachronistic completely misses the point. So listen to this next statement. The Burevestnik, which flew well below the speed of sound, made its debut just as subsonic missiles are increasingly being shot down in Ukraine because modern defensive systems can lock onto them. Strategists are instead focusing on using faster hypersonic projectiles now in development. Okay, remember, Burevestnik is nuclear powered. It is effectively a flying Chernobyl. So yes, the Russians want you to intercept it over Ukraine. If let's say they were going to launch it, which would be a massive, massive escalation. But this is exactly why Putin insisted on having this test take place right now, while US President Trump is evaluating the feasibility and the rationale providing US Tomahawks to Ukraine that the Ukrainians likely would use to strike deep inside Russia. If the Russians were to launch Burevestnik and Burevestnik were to be intercepted over Ukraine or anywhere close to Ukraine, right? Because you can't intercept it at the ground phase, right? You can, if you were to intercept it using or attempt rather, because it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to intercept. Like I said, there was no weapon designed for it, weapon system. But if you were to attempt to use an aircraft, or Patriots, you would intercept it at the mid-course over Ukraine, over Europe. It would create a massive radioactive disaster. In fact, several articles mentioned that in U.S. press mentioned that U.S. Air Force actually used to have a similar program trying to develop a similar capability, but it abandoned the program because of the risk of radioactivity. But that is precisely why Putin wants to use it, because he wants to give a checkmate to U.S. president in terms of his decision calculus. It's what the Russians call either checkmate, or you can make like a type A or a type 2 mistake. So if you attempt to take it out at the booster phase or on the launch pace, on the launch pad, right? Because you have the signatures, because like the experts said, it has unique because it's nuclear powered. Once you power it up, you emit signatures. So there's a capability in the U.S. intelligence community called MASIN, Measurements and Instrumentation Intelligence. The Defense Intelligence Agency is actually in charge of those collection programs. And so And then if you attempt to strike it down on launch pad or in the boost phase, then you're effectively starting a nuclear war with Russia. Then you attack Russia first. Uh, you don't know at that point uh, what the intent is, right? Why did the Russians power up the missile? You know, where that missile is going to, what is going to be, what's its intended target? So effectively starting a nuclear war. And if, you know, do preemptive defense, the Russians have their own preemptive doctrine of preemptive defense, and they could launch 300, you know, ICBMs at U.S. homeland because there's justification for them based on the Russian military doctrine. So that's mistake number type A. The mistake type B is that if you launch it, if you intercept it anywhere, you know, over Europe or over the United States, you're creating a radiological catastrophe for yourself. So that is the conundrum. That is the checkmate that Putin has created. Yes, it is a psychological weapon, a huge psychological weapon. We're getting back to sort of the mutually assured destruction phase, that the doctrine that was containing both sides, from preventing both sides from the first strike with nuclear warheads. And it's still kind of sort of that type of doctrine applies in the ICBM, nuclear ICBM realm. Uh, and the START treaty that is expiring, by the way, the new START is expiring in February, and President Trump dismissed. Well, he didn't outright dismiss. He kind of indicated, well, maybe that's a good idea. When Putin probed, sort of with Trump saying, yeah, we could potentially extend the new START, but then Trump just kind of backed out of it. So there is the probability or the risk of a massive out of the blue nuclear strike, first strike, either by Russia or by the United States, is, I don't want to say zero, but it's close to, it's extremely low, right? Because neither side wants to obliterate each other, and we certainly have enough weapons between the two countries. Russia and the United States hold 90% of nuclear weapons um, in the world, and so that would be basically an obliteration. So neither one wants to do that. But this is exactly why the Russians developed Burevestnik, or flying Chernobyl, as I call it, to get the upper hand in that nuclear realm, because we do not have a symmetric capability. NATO does not have a parity deriving capability, if you will. And so the all this talk, happy talk, by the way, continuously I hear and read in Western media, uh, including, you know, the so-called conservative publications, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, New York Post. Just give them more weapons, give Ukraine more weapons. Don't worry about this Burevestnik. It's a nuclear, you know, it's a huge nuclear hazard, and so Putin is not going to launch it. Just give them more weapons. It precisely misses the Russian thinking and the whole intent for that particular missile system, Burevestnik. So, just to wrap up, unique fairly unique missile. Putin conceptualized it, or rather, on his orders, it was conceptualized in 2018 during Trump's first first term, when likely Putin was making his decision to invade Ukraine, which he did in 2022 because he did not see any steps by the U.S. and NATO to ratchet down the invitations to NATO to Ukraine rather into NATO. So no intercept capability right now within the US and NATO arsenal, and the capability that we could potentially adopt is very uncertain. And yes, Putin will use it as leverage to with Trump during the negotiations to settle the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This is why Putin is not particularly does not feel uh, threatened by the tomahawks, about the sanctions. He is not really changing his mind. So, and Budivestnik is part of that uh, arsenal of both kinetic and non-kinetic capabilities that Putin rely on to maintain his leverage, or his deck of cards, as President Trump said. And he said a few months ago that Putin has all the cards. So if we had cards, we would have used them already. Don't you think that President Trump would have used them already? So anyways, that's your briefing. And if you like this, follow me on X, or formerly Twitter, at Rebecca0132. I'm also on other social media platforms: YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Truth Social, Getter, etc., etc. Rebecca Koffler was censored but not silenced. Thank you for joining in.